Hey folks, thank you for your patience. Let's get started. So the objective of this call is to ensure that you have good clarity about the opportunity with Turing, and hence you approach this opportunity from the point of awareness and to answer any questions that you may have. So we'll split the call in three parts. Firstly, we'll go ahead and do a quick round of introduction and context setting from my side. That's number one. Secondly, I'll give the details of the opportunity with Turing, the full details about the same. And thirdly, I'll share Turing's expectations and the next steps from here on. So that's how the call is structured. Please give me a quick thumbs up if you can see me, hear me clearly, and you understand the structure of the call, starting from introduction and context setting to the next part, which is details of this particular opportunity, and finally the third part, which is the Turing expectations and next steps. All right, great. Kalyan, I hope you can also hear us and follow us. I didn't get a thumbs up, and that's why I'm confirming from you. So, in the first part of introduction and context setting, so folks, my name is Sankalp Chabra. I work as a recruitment consultant partner for Turing. My job is to help my client organizations hire relevant talent from the market. That's what I essentially do. I I find the relevant talent, recommend it to the clients for specific positions. They conduct the recruitment process, and if they find it a good fit, they onboard those candidates. In my ecosystem, there is no charge and fees to the candidates, and there is nothing that's charged to them. I have otherwise have had a corporate background experience of having worked with some firms. Last, I was working as the director of product and marketing at Snapdeal. I left that job around 2 years back to pursue my own initiatives, and now I run this recruitment headhunting agency. So Turing is one of my clients, similar to several others such as Hindustan Times, Ixigo, etc., with whom I work to serve candidates from the market. That's a quick introduction from my side. To tell you a bit about Turing, it's a billion-dollar organization that works with the top tech players such as Meta, OpenAI, Google, Amazon, etc., and completely work from home remote setup, has workforce in tens and hundreds of countries, and they usually hire in bulk, volume, and batches. In 2024, I've worked with them for several thousands of candidates, of which around 1,000 plus candidates cleared the interview round, and several hundreds of them eventually got onboarded with Turing as well and are working with them. So that's the context with which I come from, and hence I'll not only share just the details of the opportunity, but I also share a lot of on-ground report and feedback coming in from all those candidates who got placed and have been working with Turing. That being said, let's go ahead and discuss the second element on the Turing details of the opportunity. Just before I come over there, let me cover something more on the context part. In the context, I also want to know where do you want to share with you where do you stand in the process. So right now, you stand at a place wherein you were shortlisted for the bar raiser interview, and your profile was submitted to Turing. They shortlisted your profile and an interview was set up. Now, either you have cleared the interview or you are about to have the interview in the next few days, and that's where you presently stand. For those who have cleared the interview, I'll also guide them what are the next steps, and for those who have their interview in the next 2-3 days, I'll also give you some interview tips around the same as well. So that's the overall context over here. And with that, that covers the first section of introduction and context setting. And I'll now go ahead into the second section on the details of this particular opportunity. So in terms of the details of this particular opportunity, over here, I'll cover the various aspects such as payout. I'll cover the aspects of the legal arrangement structure. I'll cover the trial period, work setup. I'll cover the nature of projects. I'll cover all these elements so that you have a comprehensive understanding of how this opportunity will work. Let's start from the first section, which is the payout section. So Turing being a US entity, they will negotiate a rate with you on a dollar per hour basis. So you should be comfortable in having a conversation on a dollar per hour, and you should be familiar that what translate into an INR amount. So for reference, I'm going to give you some numbers. $10 per hour translates to around a lakh and a half per month and 18 lakhs on an annual basis. Double of that, $20 per hour translates to 3 lakhs per month and 36 lakhs on an annual basis. And same going forward, let's say $30 per hour will translate to 4.5 lakhs per month and 54 lakhs on an annual basis. So this is just for you to have an idea as to like uh, how would this work. In the case of payout, another aspect over here is that when you want to negotiate your pay with Turing, some factors that you should be cognizant and which will help you negotiate well are, first is the factor of supply versus demand, which means that if it is a niche role or it is a role for which a lot of candidates are available, it plays a role in the negotiation strategy. Second is understanding your years of experience and relevant experience and discussing that with the recruiter. And finally, also your interview score and your past CA to better understand the setup, etc. When you file taxes at the end of the year. But to give you a thumbs up rule, up to half of the income is exempted from taxes and the rest half of the income is subject to taxes, which also offers a huge amount of savings as opposed to, let's say, salaries which are like kind of completely taxable. So that's overall with regards to the payout. I think we've covered that section to a decent extent, and now we'll move on to the second subsection over here, which is the legal structure of arrangement that exists between the two parties. Over here, Turing will invite you to join in the form of an contractual setup. Now, some people may call it independent contractor, independent consultant, independent gig worker, independent freelancer. All of that means the same. What it essentially means is that this is not a permanent employment setup. And they will mention it very clearly in the agreement contract as well that they'll share with you. That this is not a permanent employment opportunity. So imagine if you kind of collaborate with Scalar Academy to teach a course on Python for 6 months. When you collaborate with them and you develop the course material and teach the course, you will get paid for developing the material, for all the time in teaching, for checking assignments, etc., and everything. But that doesn't mean that you have become a permanent employee with Scalar Academy. Similarly, is a contractual kind of setup. In a contractual setup, what usually happens is that the pay is significantly higher. Like when you will collaborate with Turing in the form of an independent contractor, the pay is going to be higher, but it will not come with the benefits of insurance and paid leaves. And also there will be no PF deposited over here because Provident Fund gets deposited in the case of permanent employments. Over here, this is not a permanent employment and hence no PF deposit will take place. Now, that's over here with regards to the contractual setup. Another point in the contractual setup is that one can join immediately in the contractual setup format. One doesn't need to go through the complete process of finding a job, putting a resignation, completely serving the notice period, then shifting at another place, and then your PF account gets transferred and then working. That's the usual process for job transition, wherein you pick up a permanent employment job. In the case of a contractual one, you can simply get started immediately. So that's the setup over here. I'll explain more as we proceed. But in this case, they'll invite you in the form of an independent contractor setup. That's number one. So we have discussed the payout. We have discussed the contractual arrangement that this is not a permanent employment. This is an independent contractual arrangement. The next part over here is the setup, the work setup and how it operates. So the work setup operates in a format wherein first you're invited to participate in a paid trial period. when you are participating in a paid trial period, what it essentially means is that for the first 3 weeks from day 1 till day 21, you are evaluating the organization, the culture, the project, the learning opportunities, and taking a call if you would like to continue it in the long run. Similarly, Turing is evaluating your candidature in terms of the number of tasks that you complete, the quality of tasks that you complete, and they are evaluating if you are a good fit for them. At the end of the trial period, both parties express that whether they would like to continue. If both parties decide to continue, fantastic. Nothing gets changed for them. The contract period simply continues forward for those candidates. There's nothing new contract, etc. that's signed. It simply continues ahead in the same format of independent contractor setup itself. However, in cases where either party feels that it is not a good fit and they would like to take an exit, in that case, the candidate simply gets paid for whatever work output they would have created during the trial period. So it's a paid trial period. Typically, I have seen that if 10 people kind of start, around 3 or 4 of them kind of like take an exit at the end of the trial period, whereas the rest 6 or 7 kind of continue in the long run, and it works out well for them. A lot of people have seen them completing the trial period and then even moving out from their existing jobs to completely focus upon Turing as well, so that they can give it the due attention that it deserves. Having said that, just to clarify once again, your arrangement with Turing will remain in the form of an independent contractor setup itself. That's around the trial period part. In terms of the work setup, this is highly an individual contributor kind of an equation. And this feedback is coming from the hundreds of candidates who have got onboarded. And for you, your project, your manager may be slightly different, but I can say this with a fair degree of certainty because all those hundreds of candidates have given me the same feedback that the work is highly individual contributor based, which means that you have more ownership for your work. Yeah, because it's more independent contributor. It's not that on a daily basis there are like 3 4 hours of meetings which you have to kind of attend and you have to like coordinate for all the work, etc. A lot of the work allocation, work completion, work submission over here will happen in an asynchronous format, which means you will have more flexibility to pick up the most a part of your project or work and deliver it at a time when you are the most productive. So for example, if you're a morning, afternoon, evening, night person, pick up majority of the work and submit it at that point of time so that you are the most productive at that hour. Because what really matters to Turing again is that you're completing the tasks, activities of the week and completing it of the required quality level. If you're maintaining those quantity and quality, that's the most important thing that Turing is looking for. And hence, the work over here on a weekly basis is also kind of tied to the tasks activities. So billing is also kind of tied to the tasks activities. For example, the tasks are allocated for a week. You've got to complete those to kind of like bill for the same. It doesn't work in that way that you logged in the morning and you logged out at any particular time, and then basically you have, like you were saying, that you work for that much time but there is no output that is to be presented. In that case, the billing may not get approved, and hence the work output is tied to the billing over here. And hence each one may also take a bit different time. For example, some people may take a bit lesser time, some people may take slightly more time to do the same amount of work, and that's up to their productivity and efficiency. But billing is largely tied to the work output and the completion of tasks and activities for the goal of the week. So that's over there with regards to the nature of equation and setup. Typically, I have understood that there is usually one meeting that happens for around 30 minutes in the evening, wherein the team catches up and they discuss feedback and what's working and what's not working. And while the role is individual contributor, that does not mean that there is not support and ecosystem. You have training, you have peer groups, you have squad lead, team lead with whom you can connect and take guidance and feedback. That definitely exists over here. So that's around the nature of work. And finally, coming on the nature of project. So the projects which are the most active right now are LLM training based projects. Now, what does it mean when you are a full stack LLM trainer or Salesforce LLM trainer or C++ LLM trainer? In those cases, what it essentially means is that your job is not to do coding by yourself on the job, but You will be evaluating the code outputs coming from LLM models and giving your descriptive feedback on those outputs, which help train the models in a better manner. So that's the kind of work you do. You evaluate the LLM model outputs and give your descriptive feedback, which helps train the model in a better format. That's the kind of role that is over here. And which also brings me to an important interview tip, that when you get a coding question in your interview, don't just solve it, but also articulate your thought process well, because they were looking for candidates who can articulate their thought process, which eventually helps give them better inputs to the LLM models as well. So for articulating a thought process, talk about the approach that you're thinking, talk about alternate approaches that you can think of, talk about the various pieces of code and how is it structured, write a clean code with clean formatting, all that will play a role. For Salesforce, LWC is a major component. So apart from Apex, LWC will also be covered. Coding in LWC will be asked. For full stack, it's JavaScript is mandatory. One of the backend technologies, either Node or Python, and some basic questions on React. That's how it is. Coding would be expected in everything. And finally, on C++, I would encourage you to practice some mid to high level difficult problems from Lead Code, CodeChef, and HackerRank. That will also help you perform better and solve the C++ coding problem statement that you will receive in the interview. So that's over there. They test your coding skills, because eventually if you have to give feedback on evaluating the code outputs, the coding skills will matter, because someone who's writing a good code is probably able to evaluate the code better and give feedback accordingly. But please ensure that you're proactively articulating your thought process and not only depending on the interviewer's nudge for the same. You're proactively communicating it effectively well. That's around on the nature of projects part as well. With that, we have covered the payout, we have covered the legal arrangement, we have covered the work setup, trial period, and finally the nature of projects as well. This completes the second section as well. And now I'll go into the final section, which is Turing's expectations and next steps as we proceed ahead from here. Please give me a thumbs up if what we have covered over here till now sort of makes sense and it gives you clarity on about the opportunity, what's expected, and how do we proceed ahead. Suraj, Chanu, thank you for the response. How about Kalyan, Rachit, Shaurya, Apur? I hope you people are following me and sort of like are gaining clarity about it. All right.
Yeah.
Finally, coming to the last section, which is the next steps from here and Turing expectations. Now, for those who have cleared the interviews which happened in the last few days, for you, there is a form that needs to be filled up. It's a Google form. So please fill that form up. That's number one. If you have not received the form, please ping me on WhatsApp so that I can send you the form immediately. Let me send my WhatsApp number over here in the chat so that you can reach out to me for any guidance and support that you need. That's number one. For full stack and C++, there is also round two that's taking place. For those who are clearing round one, based on their interview scores, people with higher scores are being called first and then the order is being followed. You may be invited for a round, you would be invited for a round two, and you got to clear that as well. And once you clear that, then the HR will connect with you. For Salesforce, there is not going to be a round two, but your interview recording will go for further evaluation by the project delivery team, and they will evaluate your performance on the recording of the interview again. And then again, an HR will connect with you. So the form needs to be filled up by all three profiles. Then round two will take place for Salesforce C++, where the candidate will be requested to join. In Salesforce, they'll just analyze the recording of the previous interview and then take a decision. And in all cases, eventually an HR will reconnect with you to validate a few things. Now, what are the things that they check in the form as well as with what the HR also wants to validate, which are kind of non-negotiables from Turing side, and there is no flexibility from Turing to handle those particular points. Let me elaborate those. And because if you are not aligned with any of these, it's better to kind of step out right now because there is no flexibility and negotiations possible over here. They hire in bulk and batches, and I've like seen it with I've seen like as I told that I work with thousands of candidates. I know there is no flexibility over here, and hence I'm trying to set the right expectations from the get-go. So firstly, Turing is looking for people who are okay with contractual. You got to confirm that with them that yes, contractual works for you. The contract length could range anywhere from 3 to 12 months, depending upon Salesforce is around 3 months, C++ full stack is 6 to 12 months, Having said that, your arrangement or agreement, your payout will be with Turing, and the clients can change as you continue to work along with Turing. It's very much feasible that the clients will continue to change, but your arrangement will stay with Turing itself. So, first is they're looking for people who are okay with contractual, give them a confirmation. Secondly, they're looking for people, as I told you, they're highly preferring people who can start immediately. So, when they ask when can you start, immediately, 1 week, 2 week, etc., will recommend highly to you that go ahead with immediate joining. Immediate doesn't mean tomorrow. Immediate means that whenever they have the next batch, they can place you over there. Typically, they have their batches on Mondays and sometimes on Thursdays, but mostly it's Mondays. So confirm to them immediately, because what like I know for sure that once they get all the responses, there is going to be a filter applied, and the people who have mentioned immediately, they get the topmost priority for being picked. And I understand some of you may be working, and hence you may be thinking, how will we start immediately with them? For you also, my recommendation is go ahead and start immediately. For those who are not working, definitely start immediately. For those who are working also, my recommendation is to start immediately because of two reasons. Firstly is that, see, anyways, when you will start with them, it's a paid trial period. You also don't know for sure whether it will work out and whether you would like to continue, and Turing would also like to continue with you. And hence, it is understandable that if you're not leaving the job initially, and you would see that in the batch as well, a lot of people who will join Turing, many of them are already working. And because there is no PF deposited over here, because the contract clearly says this is not a permanent employment, this is not a dual permanent employment case. Because over here, it's not a permanent employment. There's no PF being deposited. The contract clearly says it is not a permanent employment. It's an independent contractual setup. So my recommendation is just get started immediately. It will help put your profile on the top. And then once you clear the trial period, that's when you can take the call with regards to your existing job and consider moving out from there, so that you can completely focus upon Turing to deliver it the quality and quantity of work that it requires. Having said that, your arrangement with Turing will remain in the contractual setup itself. So that's over there with regards to the second point, preferences for people who can start immediately. Even if you need like 2, 3, 4 days, I will say go ahead and start immediately. It will anyways take a few days for them to send you the offer. So simply tell them immediately so that the preference is for you on the top priority. The third thing Turing is looking for is people who can commit up to 40 hours a week. They sometimes use the word full time. Please understand, full time doesn't mean permanent employment. Full time means 40 hours a week. Now over here, they're looking for people who can commit up to 40 hours a week, which is again tied to your tasks and activities for the week. Now, some people, based on their years of experience and productivity efficiency levels, may take 40 hours. Some people may take much lesser than that, 35, 38, 32, 30 hours. Some people may take a bit longer, like 44, 45, 47 hours as well. In either case, the billing will take place for 40 hours because that's tied to the work output over there. And there is an option where you can start with 30 hours and later on shift to 40 hours. But those people are again not given the priority. The priority only goes to those who are willing to start ahead with 40 hours per week. And frankly speaking, there is not a huge difference between starting at 30 and starting at 40, because in the first few weeks, it's anyways some basic training, some onboarding, some basic task allocation, etc. So on ground, there's not a huge difference between 30 hours and 40 hours per week in the first few weeks. Anyways, that option of 30 and switching to 40 is allowed if you're choosing 30 for 1 or 2, 3 weeks. If you're choosing 30 hours for the first 6 weeks and then you want to shift to 40, your profiles are dropped. So my recommendation is, because on ground there isn't a huge difference and it's all about your productivity efficiency, my recommendation is go ahead and start immediately with 40 hours per week. It will help you to grab the opportunity and will put you on the top of the priority list. The second last thing that they're looking for is people who are okay to overlap a few hours with the US timings. So as per Indian time, it will start from 8:30 p.m. They're looking for people who can overlap 4 or 5 hours with the US timing, and that is also being done largely so that there is a stand-up meeting, or if there's a meeting, etc. People are able to attend that at that point of time, and the team can get together. But the work is quite individual contributor based, and apart from that kind of a 30-minute meeting, all you have to ensure is that you are submitting the work on time and of quality. So the ideal expectation is that you're overlapping 4 or 5 hours in the evening and the rest hours are flexible. The practical on-ground reality is that you have to attend that catch-up when it happens in the evening, and overall you have to ensure that your work gets delivered to them, irrespective of like when you are the most productive. So And lastly, they're looking for people who are okay with the LLM trainer role, which means that your role is not to do coding by yourself, but to evaluate the code outputs and give your descriptive remarks, which helps train the model better. So that's overall people, the five expectations that they're looking for is okay with contractual, okay to start immediately, okay with 40 hours per week. These two people get the topmost priority, and then okay with overlap hours and okay with LLM trainer role. So that's the overall comprehensive understanding of the opportunity and kind of non-negotiables that Turing is expecting. When Turing reaches out to you via the when you have to fill up the form or when you have to reply to Turing's HR via email or WhatsApp, I'm happy to provide my support if you want to connect with me at that point of time to quickly validate the budget, to quickly validate the overall response. I'll be happy to review your response and give you quick feedback. If I feel any of that needs a course correction, I'll let you know so that later on you don't land into trouble with the HR. There have been times when people landed into trouble when they did not reach out to me for the guidance. They landed into some trouble and they reached out to me later on. I was still able to help some of them, but not all of them. And hence, my recommendation is if you can reach out to me before you send the response, I can guide you if I see any concerns in advance itself. And I've shared my WhatsApp number any which ways with you. So feel free to reach out to me at that time. With that note, I think I've like covered all the pointers. We are like right around the 30-minute mark. And I appreciate you people taking out the time and participating in this discussion. If you have any questions, you can send those to me in the chat. If you do not have any questions, I wish all the best to those who are appearing for interviews. For those who have already cleared, if you don't have received the form, please ping me immediately so that we can send you the form link. With that note, we sort of conclude the discussion. Thank you once again. I hope you found it useful and informative and productive. Please send across your questions in the chat if you have any. Thank you.
Yeah, I have one doubt. We have to overlap like 4 to 5 hours. They told, right?
Yes, I mean the standard expectation is 4 or 5 hours of overlap. The
Yeah.
primary reason they're requesting for that overlap is because they have a meeting usually of around 30 minutes in the evening when the team gets together to discuss the
So
progress of
my
the work.
question is I also have some meetings in the evening here in my current work. So if they overlap, I cannot attend them. Is that okay with them?
See, I don't think it will be okay with steering if it happens on a continuous ongoing basis. So you'll have to figure out what's the right balance to sort of work because I know, especially in the trial period, you'll have to figure out how do you strike the right balance. Usually, their meeting happens like a bit late in the evening, like after 10 or 11. So you can see it at that point of time that what's the best solution that's feasible.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay. But they in general expect people to join for those catch-ups, especially in the initial few days. They're expecting people to join so that they can get an update on what's the progress that's taking place.
Yeah.
But largely more important than even the meetings is eventually your completion of the work. If that's taking place, I think that's what matters the most to them.
Okay. Got it.
All right, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.